Hi, I'm Duncan McAdams and welcome to Keach 3D Advanced Manufacturing, your complete 3D printing service provider. And today we're going to talk about 3D printing of sand moulds. So let's go and talk with Doug Beard, Business Manager here at Keach 3D.
At Keach 3D we're very excited because we've now have the ability to print in sand and a range of metals. This is something that's new to the country. We've previously used 3D printed sand moulds for the foundry industry, but we've had to go to Europe to get those made. Now we have the ability to do them here in Australia, which is very exciting. Sand printing is aimed purely at the foundry industry. At the moment, if you want a metal casting made, you have a pattern that has to be made, so your tooling has to be made first. Tooling's very expensive. And if you've got a low volume casting, one or only a few of, you're essentially paying thousands of dollars for tooling that you're only going to use once or a couple of times. And that's a very expensive process, which makes the end casting very expensive. With 3D printed sand moulds, we can now go straight from a CAD file to a 3D printed sand mould, no tooling whatsoever. So you're actually paying for one 3D printed sand mould, or two or three, and that's all you're paying for. You're not paying for the tooling. So if you've only got low volume or highly customised parts, 3D printing fits perfectly. The difference between the cost of a 3D printed sand mould and a piece of tooling, a pattern for a casting, is significant. You could be saving as much as 80–90% on the tooling cost by going down the road of 3D printed sand moulds. So essentially, if you've got a high volume casting, traditional methods of making the patterns is still the way to go. So if you've got a large volume of parts, you would still need to make your production tooling. Whether you do that with CNC, whether you do it with 3D printing, you still need that production tooling. Where the 3D printed sand moulds fit in is, again, that low volume or high customization. So the 1-ofs, 2-ofs, 3-ofs, or highly complex parts, because one of the other advantages with 3D printed sand moulds, you're going straight from a CAD file, a three-dimensional computer model, into the sand mould. So undercuts or awkward shapes don't matter. Traditionally with casting, if you have what we call an undercut or an overhang, you can't cast it. You can't draw the pattern away from the sand mould because it has that undercut on it. With 3D printed sand moulds, it doesn't matter because you're not drawing a pattern or a piece of tooling away from the sand mould. You basically print whatever shape it is, put the two halves of the sand mould together and pour the metal in, and away you go. For example, we've just produced some 3D printed sand moulds for a company that manufactures superchargers for motor vehicles. Very complex internal shapes. These were prototype castings, so the sand moulds were the ideal solution to that issue because we did not have to make expensive tooling just for a prototype. So the prototype sand mould was used to cast in aluminium, and that aluminium casting was then used to check machining tolerances, form and fit, and once all that's confirmed, the company will then go to traditional patterns and produce those parts in higher volume. One of the other big advantages of using 3D printed sand moulds is the turnaround time. Traditionally, lead time for a complex pattern could be in the order of 6, 8, 10 weeks. If we've got the CAD file, we can turn that 3D printed sand mould round within a week. That 3, 4, 5, 6 week saving in time equates to a lot of money. We have here a steel casting that was poured in a 3D printed sand mould. It's quite a complex shape, and in fact, with traditional tooling methods, would be very, very difficult to make a pattern for because of the undercuts involved. Not an issue for 3D printed sand moulds, and you can see that a fairly complex part can be cast very quickly because we didn't have to wait for the tooling. That was a day turnaround for a 3D printed sand mould.
So as you can see, there's a huge opportunity with 3D printing, and Keach 3D are at the forefront of this technology. If you want more information or advice, then please contact the team here at Keach 3D for all your 3D printing requirements.